Alright, our first problem here is let's watch this movie, see what we got going. So there's several problems. Number one, you notice as I scrub here, the ball's not actually hitting the ground. See where it is right there? It's off the ground. Now back here, the ground in this case is this z-axis line. So we need to do something, or I need to do something to adjust that. Second problem is watch as it gets down to the end here. It kind of spins real fast and then slows down. So it's got too much rotation for the little bit of distance that it's changing. All that rotation with that short amount of time has to happen quickly, so it looks like all of a sudden the ball. And then here, the ball isn't rotating at all. And now it starts to rotate, and then all of a sudden it really rotates fast, although it's not moving very much. And then it gets to a better pace. We also are missing anticipation up here. It immediately just goes forward. And it also looks like it kind of slides a little bit as it goes forward, like it's moving too far for it not to be rotating. It's moving in the z-axis, or forward if you will. It's moving too far forward without rotation. So those are elements we want to address. Okay, so we're going to do all this through the graph editor. So let's first take on the problem we were having with the ball not landing on the ground. I think if you look here, you can see where the problem is. Notice that the keyframes are not all in one line. So if I were to get my playhead to this one, let's make sure I'm on the right keyframe. Okay, you can see the value there is a negative 2381. If I go forward, 2381, but now here at frame 87, I'm at a different number, 23, and it's not 0.81. So again, now I'm at a different value there. So one way to correct this is go back to the keyframe where the value is correct, right here, this one. Click on the number and then say Command C or Control C if you're on a Windows machine, Command C on a Mac. Then that copies that value. Then go to the right keyframe, click in that window and say Command B or paste, hit return, and then say key selected. So you have to do two different things. We get to the correct keyframe, say make sure we have that selected, paste, return, and then key selected. So if you don't hit return, it doesn't change the numbers to what you pasted. And if you don't hit key selected, it will also go back to the old value, to the original value. The other way you can do this is you can come up in the graph editor and notice in this case you can see where the keyframe is right on this line, negative 24. What we can do is just drag this down each of these keyframes so they're also touching that line. Dragging a box around the keyframe to get just the one keyframe at a time. This one wants to be stubborn. I'm sorry, I got the wrong key correct. There we go. Middle mouse drag. So that should be a oops. this point we don't, this is where the ball's rolling, so we want the Y to be a perfectly straight line. Okay, so now we can see as the playhead moves, okay, everything's bouncing and hitting the right line. Okay, so we've solved that problem. Next problem we talked about, when I see something like this, and I always do my animations this way, I always end up using all these little keyframes. Then I look at this at the end and I'm going, well, why do I need all those keyframes? It's almost a perfect arc or a perfect curve. So why don't I just get rid of these and have it travel just as a curve. Okay, so let's see how that works. Now, we're basically saying the translation now is just going to move us down the road. Okay, so we basically have the exact same effect, but fewer keyframes to adjust. Okay, and while we're on the translation here, we want to make one more adjustment. We want to go back to the lesson we were talking about earlier with anticipation. Okay. So right now, see if I can get these two things at a scale that you can see them. Right now when I'm at frame 1, the ball just goes immediately. And it kind of, like I said, it kind of glides, but we're going to adjust that later. What I'd like the ball to do is back up just a little bit and then roll forward to create anticipation. So with just the translation selected, I'm going to go highlight this beginning, and I'm going to grab the handle for that first keyframe and raise it just a little bit up in the air. So what should happen now is, see the ball move backward. It moved backward because the value, when I moved that handle, see the value went above this line. So this line of 0, these negative numbers, in the software's mind, the ball is translating in the z-axis. That's the negative direction. By creating a bit of a positive, now what's happened is the ball feels like it has to go backwards to go to that positive, and then it's going to go into the negative direction. Now it looks a little odd still because the rotation is always, or is still going forward, but we'll get to that in a second. So when we get to the rotation, we're going to want to do a very similar step and have then the rotation rotate the ball backwards as it moves backwards in that little motion there, and that will become our anticipation. So the translation is done, and then here's the rotation. Let's say view, frame, frame select. We can see the whole thing, and you can see we got the same situation here. And we were talking about with this rotation, we had a couple situations or a couple instances where it really wasn't very good in my movie. If I kind of glide across that front, I should really be rotating a little faster. And then I'm doing okay here, kind of okay here, but all of a sudden here, right here, notice I'm not rotating at all. So if I look at the graph, what I'm suggesting, see, that's what we thought. It's almost a straight line there. The rotation is so minimal, the change is so minimal that the line's almost horizontal. So that's why it looks like the ball isn't rotating at all, even though it's rotating very, very slowly. And then when we get here, all of a sudden, we get this real fast rotation here. And that's a function of the slope here is real quick, and yet if you look above, it's not moving that fast. It's not moving that great a distance. So it doesn't have much time to do a tremendous amount of rotation. And as a result, it looks like it goes really fast and then slows down. So we're going to fix this up. What I'm going to do is the same thing we did with the translation. I'm going to delete all the, oops, sorry, don't want to delete the whole thing. I'm going to delete these keyframes. Okay, so now I only see this much. Now you see I'm getting a better rotation already. So I'll have to fix that beginning. but I'm rotating okay, and I'm not stopping ever. But now I'm getting to the end, and well, let's make sure I have enough to see. I want to actually get all the way to the end. So let's play it without it's selected, so maybe we can see it better. It worked. Okay, now here's something that we were talking about in the class demo. It's sometimes what you'll find is this last segment may get flat. In other words, the curve may get flat before it reaches the end keyframe, and as a result, the rotation will stop and the ball will look like it's sliding or gliding across. If that's the case, you just have to add just a little bit more slope. Okay. But now we've got the rotation. Now the only thing we don't have is, like we talked about earlier with the rotation, is this beginning point. In other words, we wanted the sphere to have anticipation. We wanted the ball to have anticipation. Right now, it moves backwards, but it doesn't rotate backwards, so it slides backwards. Okay, so what we can do is do the same thing we did with the translation. We'll grab this first keyframe and we'll raise it above the line a little bit. So now what should happen? See, it rotates back and then goes forward. Now the other thing we said was when it goes forward, it's not quite, it's still sliding a little bit forward. Now the back is working great. See, that back is working great, but the forward is it's just taking a little, not enough rotation for that much distance. So let's go to the keyframe right here and let's rotate that ball a little further. And now let's set this. Okay. So now what we should see is we get a little anticipation, and then it rotates more before it gets to the end. Here's one little problem. Let's see right here. It's going, that corner is cutting right into the ball. So something needs to be done. So let's go. So when I'm here, frame 15, and that's also where I'm rotating, I'm not quite far enough. So as I go, see, I'm going to come out to like 17. I'm actually going to change the Y and the X a little bit. So now what I should have done is I get anticipation, and then I come out past the end and start dropping. Okay. Okay. Now the last thing we were having a problem with, or I didn't like, was the way the ball was bouncing. It felt like it was bouncing, but it was like it's getting yanked. Comes down, boom. See, it's almost like it's too sudden, especially towards the end there, where that where it's really lost all its energy. It really shouldn't be abruptly coming down. So we're talking about the point where the gravity is taking over. In other words, the energy from the bounce is lost, and now it's gravity. So that transition zone where we're losing that energy from the bounce, and then the gravity is finally got total control, that translation should be a little subtler, a little softer, a little slower. And the bounce should be more remarkably abrupt. So what we're going to try to do is go back to our translation Y, and you can see what I did is I followed the the graph we made, or the diagram we were looking at, and I made this come up and it slows and then it comes real quickly. So let's try to just make that not quite so quick. In this case, the keyframe is a little too far over. I'm going to move the keyframe so it's closer to the center of the arch. So see, now I've got, certainly this is still slower, but this is, even that little bit of change should make it a little subtler so it's not quite so abrupt. And I apologize because I told you guys to do this. And I think, quite honestly, it isn't quite what we want to do. We want to do more what I'm doing here. Especially when we get down to these lower slopes. You know, those are the ones where I don't want it to slow down too much so it becomes artificial. But in these cases, it is getting pretty much just not a lot of energy. Okay. I'm just using I'm either dragging to get the handle or dragging to get the keyframe, and then I'm using the middle mouse to make that change. Okay. All right, so let's look now what we got. Let's maybe hide this for a second. And so we kind of have a little bit bigger space if we can. Okay. Looks to me like we might have just a little problem there at the end. I like the bounce better, but watch what happens here. See how it stops? Watch right here. Right there. See that? It's stopped, but it's still spinning. It's not moving forward. It's not translating on the z-axis. So let's go back to the to the rotate. Let's take that arc and slow it, make it a little flatter. Let's see now what happens. There you go. See how the ball stops and the rotation stops simultaneously. We go to the beginning, we get a little anticipation, boom, boom. And the bounce is not, the descent is not so abrupt. Okay, one more time. The only thing I'm not keen on right now is that one initial descent where it falls off the platform. It feels like now I made it go pretty fast, and then all of a sudden just stops. Like it should be spinning here before it hits the ground. It does fine when it comes up, but right here. Okay, so let's see what's going on right there with the rotation. So here again, we got the same problem we had before. The rotation is essentially flat right here between these two keyframes. So as a result, we're not seeing any rotation. The ball is coming here and then just not rotating at all. So what we can do is take this curve and change it. Now what we should see is the ball should, see now it's rotating. And then it goes off on its merry way. Okay. I think we can actually make these even more remarkable by adjusting that. All right, let's see now one more time what we got. and we're done. Okay. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you on Wednesday.